It's still here on 8th Avenue, just north of Market Street. And if you could go back into the early 1940s and go inside this building here, you'd see people very busy sewing, needle and thread and sewing machine sewing, and in charge of the place was Mr. Howard Smith. Well, everybody knew him as Skippy, and they knew that Skippy was a daredevil. Jumped off and out of airplanes is what he did, made a living by leaping. And more than that, he was one of a very few parachute acrobats who were black. That made Skippy Smith a novelty performer who also happened to know pretty much everything about parachutes when suddenly the nation needed a lot of them.
United States paratroopers prepare to go into action.
Parachutes were in demand, and if you had a company that could make them, there was work for you and jobs for your employees. Only thing, Skippy Smith didn't have a company, and being black in segregated America, where would he get the money to start one in San Diego? You had to know somebody, right? Well, guess who Skippy Smith knew? Eddie Rochester Anderson, first black American to have a continuing role on a network radio show with Jack Benny. He was a TV and film actor, major star, and show business friend of Skippy Smith. Rochester agreed to finance the operation, and so he jump-started, so to speak, San Diego's Pacific Parachute Company. In 1942, San Diego journalist Harold Keene wrote about the place, how President Roosevelt had issued an executive order prohibiting racial discrimination in hiring, and how still it was difficult for blacks to find jobs. But at Pacific Parachute, there was no color line. If a worker was recommended to him and could do the work, Skippy Smith hired blacks, whites, women of Mexican descent to sew side by side, making what were called pilot chutes and parachutes for flares and bombs. So remarkable was that in 1943 that the National Negro Business League named it the #1 African-American business in the nation. But by the following year, with the war winding down, San Diego's Pacific Parachutes closed. Eddie Rochester Anderson went on, of course, to perform in movies and TV episodes with Jack Benny, becoming one of the most familiar and beloved television comedy figures of the 1950s and 60s. Skippy moved to Los Angeles, where he is said to have had a variety of jobs. The building where he and Pacific Parachutes broke color barriers in those wartime years does not bear his name today, in a city that nearly 80 years later hardly seems to have known him. So here's to Howard Skippy Smith, really a one-man economic force, the daredevil parachutist who dropped in just long enough to make a difference, and with it, some history about San Diego. Hi guys, thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to click on the subscribe button so you can see more videos like this one.